Welcome to Expedition Self on Om Times Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parado. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parado.
Well, hello. I am Sam Parado, and you are listening to Expedition Self Live. We are going to be talking about how to relate and think about this idea of the perfectly imperfect life this evening. And just to reiterate this, we're a call-in show. And we're live on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., which is what time it is right now, Eastern Standard Time. So if you'd like to call in, you can dial the number 202-570-7057. Even if you just call in and say, hey, I'm listening, I'd love it. So, before we get into the evening, I want to make it official and let everyone know our store is open. The Self Shop is open. And you can find the link at the top of our website, expeditionself.com. I think it's the second tab from the left. Anyway, I'd love it if you would go and check it out and let us have a sense of whether you like what you see, and write me at hello@expeditionself.com. Anyway, it's been live a couple of days, and I think we're all pretty excited about it. Now we get to really, really engage in the learning process about how to do an online store, which, everything I've ever done has really been much more about words and interactions and that kind of thing. So now we get to make contact and build relationship with people through products that they get to wear or use or drink out of or write in, So anyway, I can't wait to see kind of where all that goes. Okay, so our show tonight is about the idea of being perfectly imperfect. And the reason I wanted to spend time here is because, as many of you know, I listen to people tell their stories about life all day long. And these stories, well, they're often filled with situations and circumstances that have brought pain to people, or where they were shocked and upset about it, felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath them. In general, things that didn't go well, or all of a sudden they changed or they flipped, or even just major left turns where life goes in one direction and then changes and goes in another. Oh, and it's very interesting because as a person in those moments listening to other people's stories, I'm faced with being really present to them, and not just idealizing, I can't even say that word, but intellectualizing everything that they're saying, but actually being with them as they're talking through them. And so, when some aspect of their life has taken a bad turn, I find myself in my head a lot of times offering up this phrase about how everything is really perfectly imperfect. And yet, in that moment, it can seem so trite, which is why I also don't say it. It's too easy to spit it out, right? And it doesn't really do justice to what the person feels like when they're in it. The thing about all of us, right, is that we have these philosophies. The one I really hate that people used to quote me when I was really in it, right, is, oh, this too shall pass. Yeah, I didn't like that one at all. And so, that's why I want to look at this, because there's value to the idea of imperfectly perfect. But there is a place where it gets used in a way that I actually think undermines our humanness. So like I said, the other thing about it is, even though I think it's a really helpful way to deal with these ups and downs of life, it still just a philosophy, right? Or a way of looking at things that has no proof and no guarantee attached to it. And anyone could say that the only reason they could say it that we want to find or we want to think like this is because there's some explanation in it of everything that we go through as walking, breathing, talking human beings. And of course, aren't we all looking for some explanation when we know that life is hard and unknown and unexplainable? So I'm going to try and break it down to maybe help you utilize this idea for something happening in your life right now, or to help you think about why you do or don't buy into it, why you might hate this phrase, like I hate this too shall pass. And if you feel motivated to talk about your reaction, please feel free. Call me, talk to me about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts as we go along. Okay, so perfectly imperfect. What does it mean? Because we're not talking about perfectionism, right, in any way, but we're really talking about how we try so hard to be good at things and what the cost of this is to us. So for a moment, I'd like you to think about how hard you try to be good at things. Things like your roles in life, your parent, spouse, partner, employee, manager, friend, or sister. And then I want you to think how hard you try to be good at the qualities that you value, like inspirational, unselfish, positive, creative, considerate, humble. Now think about it. How much energy and how much push do you put into being good at it? Perfect might match up if your idea of good actually meant perfect. But for most people, there's still a separation between these two ideas, right? So that's what I'm saying. We're not talking about this idea of being perfect. We're talking about all of the ways that you try to be good at it, good at something, where you put your intention into it. So this conversation is going to focus on the goodness that you associate with anything. I mean, anything you put effort into. And this goodness implies that if you put effort into it and it goes well, then you get to feel good about that. And this is a really complex system that creates a kind of centrifugal force in your life, right? Holding it all together. You know what centrifugal force is, that you go around, you spin around so much that I don't know the physics way to describe this, but it basically adheres you and holds you in one space. So the effort we expend to trying to be good at things that we care about, right? And then when it goes well, it reinforces that we get to feel good about ourselves. Well, then it makes us want to go do more stuff like that, right? That's that holding it all together. So something matters to you. You put effort into it, and then that effort is supposed to produce good. And when that good is produced, when it comes out of it, then you get to feel good. And when all is said and done, the cycle repeats itself, reinforcing your own sense of your sense of yourself, your goodness, that you can make things happen. It reinforces your power and success and sense that you've fulfilled what you set out to do and you were then rewarded for it. So in my case, I care about being a parent, right? And I have a sense of what I think my effort looks like, right? Like, what do I think being a good parent is for me? So I pick and choose what feedback I will deem as proof of me doing it well, right? And when that feedback shows itself, then I'll get to feel good about myself and then I'll do more of it. So I get to keep the good stuff rolling. And so when I think about, what mattered to me as a parent is that I wanted a child who felt comfortable speaking up. I also wanted, and you're all going to roll your eyes at this, I wanted a child that could own the so called not nice qualities, like being jealous or sneaky or, all the things that the society looks on and goes, oh, those are not good qualities. I wanted my child to have freedom to be all of that and to be okay with being all of it and to actually consider being self-reflective and aware. So from a really early age, this phrase, well, what's really going on here was part of everything that I did. And so, what do you think happens in that? I'm looking for evidence of that every day in my life with him. And as he's getting older, I'm looking for more evidence of it. So that's what I'm trying to describe is that I pick and choose. I picked and chose what I was going to look for as proof that I was a good parent, right? And so the thing about that is that the minute the feedback doesn't suggest whether it's feedback in terms of what I watch in him or whether it's feedback that he gives me directly, I don't like that. I don't think that worked for me. I really hated that. Well, now I'm in a very different scenario. But for the most part, as long as I get that positive feedback, well, I get to keep the good stuff rolling, as I said. So if you reduce it down into its most basic thought, well, then effort isn't usually just about effort. It has strings attached, right? There's likely that no effort is done for effort's own sake. It's instead effort for goodness's sake, used to produce a good outcome. All right, I'm hoping you're staying with me about this because I'm reusing words to try to really exemplify this idea that I'm making. So think about it. Where do you put your effort? And then what do you attach to that effort? Meaning, what good outcome do you want? And then when you don't get that outcome, what actually happens? That's what I want you to think about. Where do you put your effort, either in a role or in a way of being, right? And then what do you attach to that effort, right? Which means how do you know you've done it well, or how do you rate it, right, from a positive perspective? And when it doesn't go that way, or when you find out it didn't, or something doesn't work, what happens for you? So these good outcomes that we're wanting, and then they don't pan out, can become a really good reason to feel betrayed or forsaken by life, right? Because somewhere, I think this is true, we hold a belief that we're supposed to get a result when we put effort into something, that we're supposed to get a result. I'm sure there's some physics model that has something to do with this that I don't know, right? But it's like we're supposed to get a result, right? And so then what we tag on to that is it's a result that we deem as good and worthy for the effort that we expend, right? We're supposed to get the results we're seeking so that, I love this phrase, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? A squeeze in this example, like being the effort. So it goes without saying that everyone reacts differently when their effort doesn't produce the good outcome. Like, I think some people have a ton of like tenacity and grit to keep working with something and trying new things and experimenting when they're not going, or they're not, getting where they think they should go. But others are like, no good outcome, I'm not doing it anymore. So you might consider that it depends upon how much it means to them, right? or how much of their heart is on the line, or how much of their security or sense of self is at stake. I find myself thinking about how just this myriad of possibilities creates a really interesting take on the human experience. And when I think about these shows and I think about how to put them together, one of the things that's actually really challenging is that for everything that I talk about, there's 100 or 1,000 different ways that any one individual will respond. And I'm trying to talk about it so that you find yourself in the experience, right? So again, when you think about I expend effort, I expect some kind of an outcome, right? Because I put that effort in, and that outcome to me lands in the territory of what I think is good. And then looking at what do you do when that doesn't actually happen? What happens when you put effort into something, you want it to go well, and it doesn't? What do you do? How do you react? What shows up next? Recommitment or capitulation or giving up? And when you do either, what happens to your personal sense of feeling good, your sense of well-being? I remember driving down this one road in my neighborhood on days when the sun was out and the temperature was exactly what I thought was perfect. And I remember thinking to myself, what is this feeling I have? And I would always conclude that it was a sense of well-being. And it was really a place where in that moment, all my needs were met. And I felt as if the world was full of possibility. And so when I think about this conversation around putting effort into something and it going well, I often connect it with that moment of driving down the road. Okay, when we come back, we will dive in further to what does this perfectly imperfect thing really mean?
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
If I could be you,
and you could be me for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
All right, we are back. I'm Sam Parado, and tonight we're talking about this whole idea of seeing life as perfectly imperfect. All right, well, so, I hear myself often saying at the end of a day, ooh, things didn't go well today, which means that my effort didn't turn into something that I felt good about. And I know we're supposed to be talking about perfectly imperfect, but you can see how before we ever really get there, we need to get clear and conscious about what we're really up to with this idea of expending effort and how that effort is conditional and based on some given outcome that we wanted, that we considered a good one. Well, so there's lots of outcomes that do not fit the result we wanted as justification, right, for our effort. Lots of them. And there's a couple of things I would like to point out about this. A lot of times when we expend effort and it doesn't turn out well, we're very capable and willing of pointing to external circumstances as the justification so we don't have to feel bad about it. Right? This is like the human condition, right? The day didn't go well and it didn't go and I didn't do so well. And so I write it off to people were frustrated because there was a project deadline they couldn't make. Now, I might even write it off to, oh, I was tired, which I still feel like is kind of a superficial way to describe it. So as a human condition, though, we are looking for some way to justify it that doesn't have us really, really drop in. So for just a moment, I want to pause and see if you can breathe into and really ponder with me how this makes so much sense. If we're expending effort to generate this positive outcome that we are going to feel good about, well, then when these things don't go well, we're now stuck feeling bad. We have to, right? It's on such a tight wire that doesn't have anywhere to go. And if we're feeling bad, well, then we have to find a reason it went that way at some level that didn't have anything to do with the effort, because then that would make us feel bad for sure. So a lot of times when we start working with someone like in growth work, it begins with helping them see that their effort was in some way not what they thought it was. Because if we can show somebody that the effort was lacking, right, even though they think they put all this effort in, well, then it gives them an ability to back away then from having to find something or someone to blame that's outside of that effort. And just as a little sidebar about this, that's how victim stuff gets moving, right? Is it finds somebody else or something else that had more power than they did. And now that's how it happened to them. So, like, listen to these phrases. I worked really hard in that class only to get a B. That teacher never gives out an A unless you're someone who's like a literary genius. Or I put so much effort into getting my house ready to sell, and then I got no offer for 6 months. Oh my gosh, the housing market is just not robust right now. So you can see these phrases, these things, right? I put so much time in my kid. I spent so much time with them, right? Well, you know what? He was just never really into that thing, right? Like we're in a constant state of doing this. This is what really I did. This is where my effort was. And then this is what happened outside of me that caused it. So I could come up with example after example to demonstrate this for you. And here's the problem, is that although external issues, they definitely can play a role in the outcome of anything we do. And we would certainly want to acknowledge these factors. But looking at the our effort as a way to cause something to go well so we can feel good, well, it's important then to actually notice what we attach to it going well to begin with, and that if we expended effort in it, there must be something we're supposed to be getting out of it. Right? Like so to give it all away, even though we might feel better in doing it, we really miss the substance of the experience in life that goes with all that effort. And this is the difficult thing, what I'm going to describe now. If I put effort into something and I want it to go well and then it doesn't, this is when I have a chance to actually grow at a being level. Maybe to see the ego in a new light and to bump up against those parts of me that are limited or rigid or tight or don't have any room to fully express themselves, like the places where I'm really ready to transform. I've talked about the growing edge before, and so it's relevant right now because when we put effort into something and then it doesn't go well, and we don't push the reasons off on something other than ourselves, well, guess what? We are standing exactly on our growing edge. Exactly on it. So going after the good stuff and then it getting less than out of it is a true intersection and a juncture in your growth and development that totally, totally matters. It's so big, right? So if you can see this, the idea that we go after the good outcome and then we get to feel good about ourselves. And then if this keeps working over and over, right? But when it doesn't, we find some good external reason why it went that way. Well, then are you able to see that you keep climbing up a mountain that sets you up for a big fall at some point when you can't use that effort or when your effort doesn't produce and there's no external place to blame, right? Especially when something that's really tragic or hard happens, right? And we know that something will be like that because that's what life is and it does. So I'm really talking about the range of anything I expend effort, whether it's to always have a clean house, whether it's to make sure I have enough money in the bank to live, whether it's wanting to have a good friend and making sure that friend knows that I care about them so that they're always wanting to be in relationship with me. All the way to the idea that I show up at the doctor and find out that I am dealing with something health-wise that I didn't bargain for, right? That here we are in life, we're putting effort into things and we're expecting a certain kind of outcome. So to circle back to Perfectly Imperfect, I'm trying to walk you through the reason a philosophy like this can make a difference in your growth process. That by demonstrating the effort equation that's supposed to produce the outcome that you deem as good, so you can feel as though you are a good person or you are good at what you do or what you invest in, and then recognizing that we have to offload when the outcome is bad, either by putting more effort in, which has an eventual end, or because you look for an outside force that has interfered or played a role as an explanation for it not going well, you are left with the place that you can go towards the miss or the bad thing and then grow. Or you can return to an original pattern of thinking that just sets you out on the cycle again. Now, I know that was so many words, right? But I'm really trying to build these bricks so that it makes sense to you. Because obviously what I would like to have happen for you is that you choose, right? You choose not to go to that explanation, that you choose to really start to think about the effort you place and what happens when it doesn't go the way you want. So most people, I shouldn't say most. I think there are lots of people who aren't really open to hearing what didn't work when they put effort in. Certainly, this is true of me at one moment or another, right? So I mentioned being a parent. Like when your child tells you the way you raised them that you felt good about didn't actually feel good to them, is an example. Or when the friend, right, who lets you know that although you gave them a great party and felt so satisfied about it, that they didn't experience it that way. Exactly how open are you to that? How really open are you? And of course, we live in a world where that person may not even tell you that it didn't go that well for you or for them, which is one of those other difficult things to kind of sort out because you might find it out 2 years later when all of a sudden they're not staying in touch with you anymore. And you don't even understand why that happens, right? See, a lot of the time when we put effort into something and we think it went well and we feel good about it, we don't want to consider that it didn't work in some other domain, right? We don't want to see that maybe somebody else had a different experience because we're holding on to that good stuff, right? We have taken it in the bowl of our, like a spoon, right? And we're scooping it in like really yummy ice cream. So we're essentially riding the roller coaster to the top. You know how it goes around the mountain? It goes click, 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 and your angle gets a bit steeper as you climb to the top of the rise before it goes into that wild stomach in your, or I guess I don't even know what that is, but the gravity goes away and your stomach is in free fall, right? The kind of energy that we put behind an effort that matters to us is like climbing up and up in that roller coaster. And when we feel good about it and we've tried really hard, it better not be accompanied by any kind of negativity or a loss or a failure or a bad outcome on the way down, because most of us just will not show up for that or be able to validate it. I shouldn't say most of us. It's just, to me, it's a very, very common human response, right? Because it's on the way down. We're feeling great. We've got that whole like wind feeling going on, the wind in the air, kind of like that drive on that road. Like, who wants to hear, oh, yeah, it didn't go that well? And of course, sometimes it's not even about hearing it. It's like some big change happens in your life and you didn't see it coming, or you didn't want it to come, and there it is, and now you're faced with dealing with it. So this is why we want to start looking at everything that goes on as perfectly imperfect. If it's good, it's imperfect. If it's good, it's imperfect. Yep, you heard me right. And if it's bad, it's imperfect. That one's easier, right? And all of that, both the good and the bad that's imperfect, is perfect. Right? I'm asking you to think in terms of the good things that you're latched onto, that they are good. I'm asking you to back away just enough to relate to them as imperfect. If it's good, it's imperfect. If it's bad, it's imperfect. And all of that is perfect. So the reason we want to see things this way is because we can then detach from our effort and the outcome of that effort as having to be good, and give it over to seeing all, like every bit of it, all of it that comes out of it, as part of the picture, part of the scene, part of the puzzle, right? As it's imperfect, but it's perfect that it's there, right? It tends to, by thinking this way, it makes room for the proverbial bad stuff. It makes space to hear things that don't add up to what we expected to happen. It makes room for reality that someone else describes. It opens us up to embracing the hard things in life, right? The things we wish didn't happen. And lastly, it opens the door for life to teach us things we can't see. I talk a lot about this mystery, right? The unknown, the unconscious, all these places that answers are there for us, or really things that are amazing and unexpected and beautiful. And so the way we can think about perfectly imperfect is that it gets us off that program of just feeding our sense of making everything good. And it starts to create a resiliency, right, to dealing with things that are not. So I have to speak again about how we block ourselves from hearing more about how it goes in life, right? Because if I'm working so hard to get it right, to be good at it, And someone or life, right? Because life dishes it straight out. Sometimes it's not through a voice, right? Someone wants to tell me that I didn't. I can very well block what comes back to me. I can hear it as criticism. I can feel hurt. I can go into denial. I can avoid it. So, what I'm describing here is a way of showing up for ourselves in life, potentially showing up for others, right? A kind of commitment about how we're going to take things on so we can actually receive every bit of life and our experiences providing something for us. So, deciding to see every little doodad of your entire life as perfectly imperfect. And I call them doodads for a reason because I feel like we only like to look at the big stuff, but it's the little stuff, right? If you can do that with the doodads, well, then you're going to be able to register all the stuff that isn't good about it, that's beyond your perception or perspective, and the stuff that awaits your discovery if you can just hang in long enough to learn about it. And these doodads really are how you do anything, from cleaning your house to maintaining your checkbook, right? They include every relationship you have, from the one with your best friend, your 5 kids, your coworker, your brother, right? They include the big events and the health scares and the broken arm and the car accident and the loss of a loved one. When I say every single doodad, I mean all of it. All of it. All right. Off to break we go. When we come back, we'll see if we can kind of wrap this conversation into something that you can work with and take along with you this week.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
All right, we're back. I'm Sam Parado, and you are listening to Expedition Self. Tonight, we're spending some time in this idea of perfectly imperfect, and hopefully you're hanging in there if you started on the show with me. So before we went to break, I was talking about how important it is to actually start to think about all these doodads of your life, all the moments, right, through this lens of everything is perfectly imperfect. Because this is the way you can keep yourself open, right? And angling always towards your growing edge, more often than not. Before I go to this next piece, I really want to say something about my show tonight. I feel like even though people go through life and they're happy and they're doing their thing and they're busy and they're checking things off their list, I really do find that there's always places that life is dishing out situations that people are getting thrown by. And then they're shocked by it. And then they're disappointed in some way or another, or they're affected by it, and they don't know how to work through it. And it's painful for me because, I mean, not that there shouldn't be pain in it, but it's painful mostly because of the way it surprises them. When in reality, I find that a lot of the pieces that lead up to moments that really throw people for a loop, there's evidence of those things all along the way. And so tonight, I'm trying to help you think about that part of your evidence is in all this effort you're expending to get it right or to have it go well. So this is the question for you. I want you to look through life and find a moment or circumstance or event that still does not sit well with you. Maybe you feel shame around it, or you're angry about it, or there's just something that has left a bad taste in your mouth and you're not good about it. Okay, find that moment. Whatever pops in your head works. And then think to yourself, what happens if I see it as perfectly imperfect? What happens if I see it as perfectly imperfect? What would look different to you? What would you have to include on the list of things that require an opening for you to accept them? Okay, did that make sense? Like what would you put on the list, right, that normally you wouldn't be open to, but now you are? When you see things as perfectly imperfect, there is a risk, right? And this risk is that you become blasé about the depth of pain and discomfort that accompanies the actual event, right? Because your head can just decide to place this idea on everything as a way to keep emotional distance from it. And then you get to remain detached and cool and aloof. This is not what we want. This is not what we want. We want you to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm just going to notice all this effort. I'm going to notice what I was running towards. And I'm going to notice what I did with it when it didn't go well. And I'm going to come back to it and say, what if I could see it as perfectly imperfect? Right? And you do have to watch this tricky part that wants to use an idea like perfectly imperfect to just detach, right? Because we are so tricky. I try to talk about this being thing more as a sweet spot, right? Where you are existing, you are feeling, and you are paying attention to what else is there for you, right? Where you're keeping your intellect working for you, but not giving it the lead. So when you think about this idea of perfectly imperfect, it's easy to actually dehumanize it and just make it an idea. But when we're really talking about going inside, that's not what we're really trying to do. We're trying to use any of these pieces like this to actually get you to a place where you can feel yourself and you can feel your feelings and you are paying attention to what's inside and that your intellect is not running the show. So there's no idea or no way of relating to life that is the right way, right? Every way that you think about it, every way will produce an outcome, right? Even if somebody thinks about life, and this too shall pass, right? And this is also imperfectly perfect because you can play out that thinking or way of connecting to your existence, and then you decide, you realize that the outcome you got is not what you want. So here I am spending all night talking about let's play with being perfectly imperfect, and then say to you, hey, guess what? No idea is the right idea. Well, that's because we're supposed to be experiencing our growth. We're supposed to be learning in a truly, truly, truly experiential way. And that means you can't take a shortcut. You have to play things out until you see them differently. So it's easy to take this conversation that I'm having with you tonight, right? And translate it to me saying it's not a good thing to want good things to happen. And this is definitely not what I'm saying, because that wanting is the very thing that keeps you going for something and not being aloof and detached and passive, right? It's the idea that the wanting to be good, when it's unconscious, leaves us unwilling to see the other elements of what it means to be here and to be you. I mean, look, everything I talk about has to do with going inside and staying with yourself, because this is where the power to make life happen for yourself actually happens. But no one said making life happen for yourself is supposed to always go well, or it's supposed to always go badly. Life is just supposed to happen. And you're supposed to be working with that sheer, raw power of showing up and bringing yourself to it. So I find myself doing my own life a lot, right? And noticing how easy it is to slip out of this open growth work, sweet spot type space. Like, it's really hard to maintain a rigor for looking and paying attention to your thoughts and feelings. And when the looking syncs up with the patterns of your life, it can get even harder. Because, patterns are baked into us, right? These patterns are generated from the core needs I speak about all the time, like safety and love and value, worth and acceptability. I have 5 of them. I have a show on that if you want to go listen to that specifically. But your unique mix-up of these needs and then the feedback you've received in life that interacted with them personally has produced patterns in you. And these patterns or behaviors or ways of being are totally unique to you. And they have a lot to do with everything we've been talking about. So in this moment, I'd like you to think about those needs. And here are some questions you can ponder. And the reason I want you to think about these needs is I'm saying that your patterns fuel what you put your effort into and what you want to go well. Okay, that's why we're doing this. We're just dropping down another layer. So how does your need for physical security, like having enough money or making sure you have a roof over your head, when it's going well, what does it look like for you? And think of the times that your physical security was threatened or put at risk. And how did that go for you? And if this is the case, what or who did you blame for it? And when all was said and done, how did you come out of it? How did you process it? What was the story that you left with, and how did it feel for you? And how does your need to feel emotionally safe with the people you share your life with look when it's going well and when it's not going well? Are you engaged in that spot? Do you just back away? All right, I've got some more here. When you think about your need for love, what do you do to make sure that you get that love? And what actions or behaviors do you take to ensure that love is always coming your way? And is there a moment when it didn't work? And how did you feel? All right. And how do you make sure you are valued in your work, valued as a parent? What makes it feel good? And how do you get validation for it? We could add, how do you make sure you are valued in your family? Right. Now think of a moment or time when you did not feel valued, and what did you do with that? Okay, I've got two more. How is your life constructed on a foundation of trying to be worthy? And what does being worthy actually look like when you're satisfied that you are living a life of worth and being someone of worth? What are the words you use to describe this? All right. And lastly, let's look at this idea of acceptability. And this one's kind of dicey because intrinsically, if we're good and causing good results, it's likely that we're feeling acceptable. So when this need is at play, we might see that you're really operating from expending effort to be good. So let's just ask it this way. How important is being acceptable to you? And what are the qualities that you ascribe to being acceptable? And how does this connect with societal norms or cultural norms within your family? So patterns that you play out have everything to do with the way you expend effort, the when of it, the how of it, to get these needs met. So when you look at your lifetime, the events and how it's gone, trying on this idea of perfectly imperfect, you're saying to yourself, if every single moment is perfectly imperfect, then it means that nothing gets written off to external events or someone else being in power over your life. You would look for these patterns tied to the needs. And in the looking, when things don't go well, or you felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath you, or you experienced something you didn't want, you would look for what is there to learn, what is there for me to understand about my life, and why I am who I am, and how can I gain wisdom. So this brings me really to a final point, which is there really are life lessons. How to love, what love is, why love at all. How do I stay whole in relationship? What is attachment? Why does competency matter? Abundance, greed, power, jealousy, joy, beauty. I'm going to keep going. Intimacy, sexuality, creativity, community, honor, health, physicality, spirituality. I'm going to keep going. Wisdom, intelligence, extremism, alignment, collaboration. You know, I could go on because your life is designed to explore one or many of these experiences associated with being human. Happiness, right? Otherwise, like, again, there's no right way to think. But when you think about it, it's like, well, what else is there to do here, right? Because the more you notice these patterns, the more you'll notice the study you're in pursuit of. And the more you do that, the more you can see your life and the world in it as perfectly imperfect. So my last comment, which is going to take 1 second, is to reiterate the point that when we're talking about real tragedy and pain, writing it off so you don't have to feel it and be present to it and take it inside as perfectly imperfect, this is not the goal. We never want to minimize suffering with an idea such as this because the suffering is totally real. And who are we to know what the growth or the learning or the sacrifice for anyone else really is? The only person we can apply this thinking to is ourselves because we're the ones that are doing the processing and the feeling of it. All right. On that note, I hope that you found tonight's show something you can actually take and work with practically. Feel free to go back over the show because it's aired on Om Times, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Pandora after tonight. And you can go back and really work it in your own process. Thank you so much for being with me. Have a wonderful week.